Dr. Jazz.
Thanks, John, for taking the time. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, but I'll just jump in. You know, I have you on so many records at home, and I said I'll drop you a line. And first, I wanted to start this talk with you and connecting with the younger generation of trombone players. I mean, there are two albums by you, basically recently, last year, by Jennifer Wharton and Samuel Blaser, actually, and especially on Jennifer's record you were really involved with. Like, what's your story there with connected with the younger players, and especially with, let's say, with these two?
Well, Jennifer in particular is my wife.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, shit.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool.
Yeah. So we were married in 2010, and about 5 or 6 years ago, she was interested in putting a project together of her own. And she was originally looking to do a classical trombone quartet. But we both play the same instrument, instruments from the same instrument company, the same maker, XO Brass. And in 2017, I believe, we did a special thing for them at the Jazz Education Network conference with 4 trombones and rhythm section, which featured some of the XO Brass artists, and I wrote a couple things for that. And so that's when she thought, oh, this is kind of what I want to do. So actually her first album has 2 arrangements from that first gig we did with XO Brass. And she wasn't an improviser at that time.
Oh, really?
So
interesting.
She dove into the whole thing head first. You know, we did a few gigs where she just kind of played 1 or 2 solos, and you know, because I was around, I was kind of her coach to start out with, and then when COVID hit, she was, you know, I was kind of it's hard to give your spouse a lesson on anything, but I gave her tips and little things to do, you know, to keep, you know, only a little bit at a time, because you know, too much, it's you know, it can strain the relationship. So, but anyway, she worked really hard, and then she improvised on the first album, and each progressive album she's sounding better and better, and working harder and harder. So, really proud of her.
Oh, wow, yeah, I didn't know that. Wow.
So when we put that together, you know, I had a lot of experience producing my own albums, so I helped to produce her albums, and obviously, I'm a trombone player, so that helps producing a trombone album. So I produced and produced the mix of all those, and wrote charts and all those types of things. So it's been a nice little project for her, and it's been a fun thing for me too, because it's sort of like playing in a big band, because I get to play a lot of lead trombone, but also you don't have to deal with the trumpets and the saxes, you know, so you get rid of all that excess baggage. Anyway, so that's been fun. And regarding Samuel Blaser's album, he was a student of mine.
Oh, really?
Back here in New York.
Okay.
Yes, when he was getting his degrees here in New York, he was a student of mine. So we've had a great relationship, and we've become really good friends. And it was cool on this last album that he decided to do something with multiple trombones.
Yeah,
and he included both myself and Jennifer. She's on that as well. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. 2 trombone players. You're probably the only trombone couple I know. I'm trying to think now, like, if there was, like, in jazz history, a trombone
I'm
couple.
sure others exist, but off the top of my head, I can't think of one.
Yeah, I'm also like, no, like, really, okay, but anyway. But otherwise, what about you as a band leader? Have you been active also, like, in that world the last year, let's say, or are you planning to release something new?
Yeah. I mean, the COVID crisis kind of put everybody, you know, off the stage for a while. So we did a return engagement last September I'm sorry, September 2022 was our first time back after the pandemic, and was to mark 30 years from our first album.
Yeah.
So we did that, and our most
Beautiful.
recent gig was in this past October. I've been traveling around a lot in November and December.
Yeah, I saw that you were in Austria and yeah, as well as Vienna.
Yeah, and I'm leaving again in a couple of weeks, so can't really do anything with the big band right now, but the plans are to record a new album this year,
Fantastic.
and hopefully that'll be released either at the end of the year or early 2025.
Fantastic.
Regarding the small group, the sextet,
Sextet, yeah, I love the sextet, man. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been pretty busy with that, and we released an album during the pandemic, which was recorded just before the pandemic. So
Into the Shadows, right?
everything was kind of, yes, Into the Shadows. It was kind of it was scheduled to be released in the summer of 2020, and at that point we had already booked a bunch of promotional gigs and tours and things like that, and everything got canceled except for the release of the CD. So it was kind of disappointing, but we finally made up all those gigs, the jazz festivals and the touring things, and actually it was interesting. I thought, oh boy, this is gonna be terrible releasing an album during the pandemic, but as it turned out, nobody else was releasing anything, so it got a lot of really good airplay and exposure. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, that's it's
record another album with that group.
Yeah, especially those players. Incredible group of players you hook up there. I mean, Walt on tenor, for me, that's like, and Scott on trumpet. I mean, all of you guys, obviously it's the rhythm section.
Yeah, no, and we're all good friends too, which, and we all kind of have, I guess you'd say, like minds regarding what the music should be. So it would be easy enough to just put together some kind of all-star thing for a recording. But for me, I like to have a working band that stays the same, so you can kind of create some kind of identity. And the fact that everybody kind of has the same idea about, how, improvisation and, tonality and, altered harmonies and all that stuff, it's a nice blend that, and we all get along great. So it's fun to gig with these guys too.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah. How have you have done so many records as a band leader, obviously, in either big band, it's the 30th anniversary, like in 2022, or sextet or quartet. If you look at yourself as a band leader, how have you progressed through the years? I mean, is it like really comfortable for you now, like leading a band? And
well, yeah, I try to do it more organically. I'm not really thinking about pressing the issue about changing or developing or growing. I just kind of, I find that the more I grow as a player, the more I grow as a writer. Sure. So the things I explore as a player seep into my writing, and eventually there's, it's kind of a slow transformation rather than like a big change, or saying I'm going to do this or write an album with this kind of point to it. I'm just kind of, and I think that serves me well as far as the music kind of hanging together on a recording too, especially the big band stuff, to try to kind of really step out. And I've done this. I've written things that have kind of stepped out of my comfort zone or whatever to kind of stretch myself, but they don't necessarily fit with everything that would go into a project of mine. So they're there. I learn from them, but maybe you'll see them somewhere down the line.
Sure. Yeah.
But as a band leader, I learn more and more about. As a band leader, I think the most important thing is that I've always also been a sideman.
Yeah.
For 30 or 40 years. So for me, whenever I make a decision about my band, the personnel, what we play, how we play it, how long we play, all these things, I'm making the decisions, and then in the back of my mind, there's me, the sideman, going, what if a leader did that to me? Would I be happy about it, or would I be complaining about it? And I know there's bands here in New York that, some of them very good bands, but they'll take advantage of the musicians in some way, either paying them a little less than they deserve, even though the leader might be making a little more than they deserve, or playing sets that are so long that people are they're hurting their faces by the end of the night. Just really trying to squeeze every ounce out of these players. And you learn from those situations that that's not what you want to do to your own players. And I guess to my testament, I've got the same players I've had for almost 30 years now. They've stuck with me all this time, so I must be doing something right.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No, but it's good, like you said, that you're a sideman. That's so important because you learn, right, from the mistakes of the band leaders.
Even if I'm scheduling one set somewhere, I make sure all the soloists, and most of my band is soloists, they each get a couple chances to do their own thing, and put them, set them up on an arrangement that puts them in their best light.
Yeah, that's important.
Because you don't want them trying to transform themselves into something they're not. The whole idea is to be an individual in jazz. So I try to put my players in the situations where I think they'll shine the best, and that makes them happy, makes me happy, makes my music sound better. So all those things really come into play.
Yeah. Do you also write like that, music, like this Ellingtonian kind of fashion way that the players who are going to play? Or
I kind of do, but also I kind of, I played with Woody Herman for 7 years, and his band had a different approach than Duke. Duke's band had a revolving personnel that many times stayed in the same chairs all the time, but he would write for individuals. So if you listen to a recording of something he wrote in the 40s, maybe 15 years later, it wouldn't fit in that particular chair in the band. So the difference with Woody's band was he had a specific sound he wanted to hear from each chair. So if somebody left from, say, third trumpet, we would have to look for someone who could give him that sound in that chair.
Okay.
Because of this large library of music he had, everything in that chair had a certain approach to it. So his concept was, rather than shuffling music around, let's just keep each chair having their own kind of personality.
Yeah.
So what I do is kind of a cross between the two. Now that I've had the band for so long, yes, if I'm writing for something for my own band, I'm thinking about who I'm writing the solos for. But many times I get people ask me to write things on commission for groups other than my own that we eventually record. So in those instances, I don't know anything about the soloists I'm writing for, so sometimes I will put the solos in the chair that I think would work best for my band. I mean, unless the person commissioning me says, we've got someone who plays alto 2, who's a great soloist, but he's not a lead player or whatever. So I try to find whatever will work for them as well as what will work for me, and kind of split the difference.
Yeah. You mentioned Woody. How did you end up in that band, actually? And what's the story with Woody?
Well, when I was always a big fan of his since I was like 16 years old. When I was a kid, all the bands were still traveling, and when I was in high school, they hired his band to come to my school and do a concert and a clinic. So the band members worked with the high school kids, and then they did a concert in the evening, and it just happened to be at a time, and it turned out it was something very notable about his band was there were a lot of trombone solos. And I thought, wow, if I'm ever going to do something like this, that's the band I want to play with. And most of the solos were kind of more open-ended and not just little short things. They were big features or something where the soloists could kind of do their own thing. So he kind of left a little individuality to the soloists on all of his charts. A lot of them were kind of open kind of solos, not open in regards to length, but not a lot of orchestrated backgrounds or anything you had to work around. It was more like when you got to solo, it was more like playing with a small group. So when I went to college, I didn't know I was going to be a performer. I was into music, but I majored in music education. And but during that time, I was still really, really interested in jazz, and during that time, the school started I went to Ohio State University, and at the time there was no jazz degree there, but my second year they started one. So I stayed in the music ed degree, but I added all the jazz classes. So I got 2 degrees basically. But I was always following Woody's band. So I thought, okay, what can I do to get in a band like that? And at the time, he was getting a lot of his players out of the Eastman School of Music. So I thought, okay, my first goal is to get good enough to get into Eastman for grad school, because they had a fantastic, still do, graduate jazz program. And so I did, and I got there, and as it turned out, I met several folks that knew people that were traveling on the road with different bands. And when Woody Herman's band came through, I gave them a recording of my playing, and a few months later, they called me up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so and as I found out, that's how they found players for everything. It was all by either recommendation or by submitted recordings. So I just kind of, it was somewhat thought out, and I had a plan to do a certain thing, and was trying to find my way there. But that's kind of how I got onto the band.
How was your experience like with him? I mean, being 7 years basically on the road, right? Almost.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I joined the band playing the second trombone chair, which was kind of like the jazz chair at the time. And I did that for about 2.5 years.
Wow.
And I started to write a little bit. And so when the first trombone player left, Woody allowed me to move up to the lead chair, which was, once again, it was a little bit of a stretch for him, because, as I mentioned, each chair had a personality, and he thought my personality fit that chair. So we had to make sure we found someone to fill the chair that would be to his liking when I moved up. And then I had to prove myself that I could do this other thing that he was looking for. And fortunately, it went well. So what was great was he was like a hands-off band leader. Like if you did something he didn't like, he wouldn't say you have to do it this way. He'd say, try another way. But if you were all fine, he wouldn't say a word, and you could kind of do your own thing, and you could kind of test his limits a little bit. Like, some of the soloists would test the limits harmonically speaking, or, being a little more free with even on the older tunes, and just see how much he could allow us to do. And he was pretty free with all that. So it was a really great experience, because it really kind of felt like it was our band, not his. And he wasn't necessarily a featured soloist. He did solo on the band, but at that time he was in his late 60s when I joined.
Yeah.
So he didn't really play all the time. So we were playing most of the time, which was great. So you could play a 2-hour concert and play 4, 5, 6 times a night.
Oh, yeah.
And if you were a player that wanted to kind of test yourself, you'd press your own limits and grow as a player. Some players would find something that worked for a particular solo and basically play that solo forever, not literally, but the same vibe, the same shapes, the same general starting and ending points. But most of the jazz players would really try to do something different each time. So it was also a good experience as a jazz musician, not just a big band musician.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then when I started writing for him more, he started giving me assignments, and I got more involved with the production of his albums and things like that too. So it was a great experience for me. But into the 7th year, that's when he got sick and went into the hospital. And the band continued for a while, but I kind of felt like this was the time to go. The second album I wrote for had just been released, and I thought it would be, a good kind of calling card moving to New York City, and it turned out it was.
Which year was that when you moved to New York?
1987.
87 already. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
How was that like for you when you came to New York? I mean, obviously you had the Woody Herman card with you, but like,
sure,
who were the first connections?
No, it was great, because not only that, but traveling on the road for 7 years, a lot of the players that had come and gone had moved to New York. So I had already had a group of contacts that could kind of show me the ropes or tell me who to get in touch with or whatever, as well as the fact that the band traveled through New York several times each year. So I got to meet some of the New York people just kind of casually over that time. And it wasn't like coming there and kind of threatening their jobs. You know, it was moving to New York and making friends with people. So when I came to New York, it wasn't, you know, I had professional, you know, people high up in the professional world playing trombone and writing and doing all these things that were kind of friends of mine. So it helped me to get past a few of those, you know, years of really tough, like trying to prove yourself. I had already proved myself to these folks, and if they didn't know who I was, I could send them a CD, and they could listen. I could say, you know, I'm playing on this, I'm soloing on this, I've wrote half of the charts or more. I produced the album. So, you know, a lot of that really took a hand in me kind of jumping to another level earlier on than a lot of people that first moved to a big city like that.
Yeah, especially, yeah. I mean, you were what, like in your 30s, basically, when you you were 30, right?
I moved to New York just shy of my 30th birthday.
Yeah, shit. So that's, that's heavy. Wow, interesting. Did you immediately, when you came to New York, start leading your own bands also? Like, or how did you enter that?
The band was first put together in 88. The first gigs were in 89.
The big band already?
That was a joint-led band. Big band. And that was a joint-led band. But by 92, it was, you know, that's when we recorded my first album.
How come you decided to, you know, band leading and immediately a big band? It's quite a big fish.
I thought it would put me in the best light. I thought it would be the best showcase for me. Number one, it would show people that I'm a good writer. Number two, it would show people that I'm a good player, that I can contract a band if needed. You know, I can put together good musicians. And it was just everything that I could do. It kind of showed people within a couple of tunes, they knew what I could do. So it was, rather than just going out to play and people find, oh, he's a great player, then a couple of years down the road finding out, oh, he can write too. And then on top of that, I had been on the road for 7 years with Woody Herman, playing all these fantastic charts written by some of the greatest arrangers ever. But then I'm looking around for them, you know, in New York, LA, wherever, and it's like, where are these people? Why don't they have their own bands? They write so great for a big band, but they pursue commercial writing, and they're doing film scores, or they're doing, you know, sports music or whatever, commercials. And I didn't really have interest in doing that. My love was always playing jazz, and so that was kind of the first and foremost thing I wanted to put. If I was going to do anything at all, it was going to be that. And it really helped the other things too. So when I moved to New York, I started subbing on Broadway shows. I did that for about 10 years. So that kind of helped pay the bills for me to get the big band off the ground and people noticing it. And then a lot of my music got published. So then it went out all over the world. And primarily here in the United States, there's a lot of educational, you know, a lot of schools that have big bands. So then I started getting called for guest soloist work, which has been a big part of what I do. Then I established relationships with instrument companies where they were helping sponsor me. So it was all part of, you know, the revenue I was making as a musician. It wasn't all coming from the same place, but it all kind of collectively helped me to focus on the jazz pursuit that I had.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So now pretty much that's all I do is jazz.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Was it heavy for you in the beginning, you know, playing with Woody? We're still kind of Woody, I guess, of course, took care of, well, you did a lot of the musical stuff, right? Like arranging and writing, but you becoming a band leader and having all those people in front of you and presenting the charts, how was it for you, that part?
Well, I think my earlier education in music education, in conducting, and being in front of groups, because I had to do all that when I was studying not arranging music education. I had to you know, direct bands and conduct and all those types of things. And then being with Woody,
Yeah.
I was kind of his musical director at the end. So when I'd have a new chart, I'd have to rehearse the band. So that
Okay.
wasn't really a stretch. It wasn't really a stretch for me, starting my own group and working with people from in front of the band.
Yeah. Yeah, that can be scary though. Yeah, I can imagine first, like, but yeah, you got the education behind you, so that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do we talked about arrangements, but I wanted to ask you about writing. How do you write a tune? Like, where do you get the initial ideas? You know, I listen to your tunes, and there's some beautiful tunes you've written through the years. Like, how do you start usually? Where do you have like a daily process or a routine or?
No, I mean, the only daily process I have is for my playing. The writing
Okay.
is, I mean, because that's always been my first and foremost love. So the writing thing is not like a daily routine. Most of the things that I've written, you know, they all kind of come from different sources of inspiration. I might hear a tune that I particularly think would fit the jazz orchestra, or you know, I've actually done some things where I've taken 2 weeks off from my life basically and gone on a retreat at one of these artist retreats and just written for a couple of weeks and kind of messed around with different things, and you know, some things work well, some things don't, and some things have turned into really nice pieces. So yeah, it really depends. If I'm writing something original, sometimes it's just sitting down with a blank slate and
Yeah.
trying to, you know, it might come starting from a melody, it might come starting from a rhythm or some kind of chord or whatever. So I try to approach it from as many angles as I can, because that helps you to
Yeah.
avoid writer's block. You know, if you get stuck on something and you're still focusing in on that same way to get to your end result, I usually try to take another angle, and something usually happens.
Yeah, it's
Or if not, I'll just let it sit for a while and come back to it when I can come back with a fresh perspective. Because I'm writing these things for myself, not for hire in many cases. So I don't have to worry about a deadline. I can,
yeah.
if something really isn't turning out to be what I want it to be, but I know it has promise, I'll set it aside and come back to it another time with fresh ears.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, it's like many people work better with the deadline otherwise. I mean, I'm the same. If I know I need
No,
like two ballads, I write
I
them
work
like,
great.
yeah,
I work great with a deadline, but many times after I send it out or get it done,
yeah.
I think to my, really wish that I could have spent more time with this, or this could have been a little better here. So I'm somewhat of a perfectionist, but at the same time, I know I do have to set deadlines for myself or things won't get done.
Yeah,
But that was the great thing about the pandemic, is there were no deadlines. It was, but at the same time, there were no obligations, so I could kind of mess around with different things freely and not worry about getting something done or not getting something done. So I tried to be as you know, productive as I could during the pandemic. I know some people actually just put it away, put the music away for a while, you know.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I understand that too. But for me, it's the only thing I've ever loved. It's really basically been a hobby that I'm now getting paid for. So you know, when people ask me what my hobby is, I'm living it. So you know, it's a different kind of thing. So it's not like I wanted to stop doing it. It was something I loved doing, and I had all kinds of time to do it. So it was actually a nice thing. I just wasn't getting paid to do it.
No, but I totally get you. I think it's a privilege that you get to play, you know, this music and actually make a living and everything. That's incredible. When did you first fall in love with this music? Actually, do you remember a moment that you heard like a trombone jazz?
Yeah, I think it might have been that concert with Woody Herman.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I sat in the front row, and it was just like the sound was bigger than life, and something, a light bulb turned on at that point.
And you played trombone already then, or?
Yeah.
How did you decide
This was when
for trombone?
I started playing trombone at age 9.
Wow, already. Okay.
So I heard Woody Herman's band. I was 16 or 17 years old.
And then you went like to this school of transcribing like all the giants from the past, like, or
not really, no, because I was still in high school, and I didn't have a teacher that was really someone who knew how to teach jazz. I was just learning how to play the trombone. And then when I went to college, or toward the end of my high school years, I took a class at a local college while I was still in high school, just a class on jazz improvisation, which turned out to be a class mainly talking about chords and scales. It was more like jazz theory. But when I went to Ohio State for my undergraduate degree, they had a jazz improv class, but being your typical student, I had already taken this class, and Ohio State accepted the credits from this other school. So I never really took improvisation during my college years. I just took the jazz theory knowledge I had, listened to a lot of recordings, and went out to clubs to sit in and play and kind of learn from the local professionals, kind of like it used to be back in, early days before jazz education.
Yeah.
I did do some transcribing, but not a lot. But I did a lot of mental transcribing. Like I'd listen to something so many times, I could figure it out on my instrument.
You got the language.
So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. John, otherwise, I wanted to ask you, like, what's still on the schedule for you for this year? I mean, I noticed you mentioned already before you're going on the road again, and but what are the future projects and albums or tours coming up for you?
Well, like as mentioned, I'm this close to finishing an album project for the big band, but I looking at my schedule, I won't have any time in New York long enough, really until the summer. So that's going to have to wait at least till then. But everything else after that, if you look at my schedule on my website, starting February, I'm going to Indiana University, which is a big jazz school in the Midwest in the United States, and I'm filling in for someone for a month. So I'm going to be there teaching jazz arranging and conducting the university big band for a month. And then in between those dates, on the weekends, I'm traveling to other places and doing guest solo concerts and things. So it's pretty crazy. And then that continues on through March and April. And so I've got usually this time of the year between February and May, it's a lot of performances at schools, master classes, clinics, and things like that, because this is kind of their big concert time of year. A lot of people have jazz festivals or whatever. And then in between there, I always try to book clubs with a small group, with either with area professionals or people that I know that I've played with many times before in these areas, because I don't, and this is nothing against playing with student groups, because some of them are fantastic, but playing with professionals who have been out there doing it, it's a different kind of rapport on the bandstand. It's you don't have to explain anything. It's something that if you don't do it regularly, your skills can kind of atrophy a little bit. So I always try to build that in to wherever I am, even if it means losing a few bucks. Just to because a lot of these clubs don't pay a lot of money. But if surrounding that there's some things that do, then I can afford to and I think it's really important to kind of attend to that skill set, playing in a small group in a club in front of an audience and not in a classroom and all those types of things, and kind of dealing with whatever the room, the crowd, the players throw at you, being spontaneous and all that. I think it's a big part of the music, and it's a big part of what a lot of student musicians don't get a chance to deal with. So I'm hoping that what I learn, I can pass on to them.
Beautifully put. Yeah. Otherwise, any plans of coming to Europe as well, or
Well, I was just in Europe in December. I'm working with a possible. Right now, it's still only a possibility, but I may be back in the spring, maybe April or May. So I'm still working out those details. I have several folks that are interested, and one person that would, I guess, say be the anchor gig. The reason I would come out there and, because it's not cheap to fly over there. So it would, you have to make sure that you have at least one or two things that make it worth. And like, for instance, when I was there just a couple of months ago in December, you know, it started out with one thing, and they were paying the plane ticket. So
Yeah, that's important.
once you have the plane ticket over there, it's pretty easy to get around. And people that had expressed interest for years that didn't have the budget to fly me out there, I let them know, and it kind of turned into a tour. So that's kind of what would happen if everything pans out the way I think it would in the spring.
Yeah. What about bringing the sextet or a quartet to Europe? Have you done that already?
No, I've traveled by myself.
Yeah, I mean,
by
but
myself.
like, have you ever thought about bringing?
Oh yes, I have.
That's...
I have done that. Yes.
Yeah.
The most recent one was my sextet went to Brazil.
Oh really? Oh wow, man,
Brazil.
that's amazing.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But in general, you know, it's much easier for
sure,
for a promoter to fly one person, and but I would love to do more of that, because I think that group, and you know, obviously the big band's a big expense, but the sextet, it's
kind of doable. Yeah,
you know, it's kind of a special thing. Obviously, I've done sextet sets elsewhere with just the players at hand, if I know that there's the right group of players to do that with. But it's not really quite the same. You're playing the same music, and but it's not like people that have lived the music for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, it would be great to hear you with your group. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
John, I will not take more of your time. So today, what's now? You have afternoon now, so.
I had the afternoon.
Yes, okay. So thanks for sharing some of these thoughts. I really appreciate it. And
it was great to talk to you. And let me know when it's up.
I think in March we'll be out. I'll send you a link and everything. So
okay, great,
cool. I hope to see you.
Really nice to meet you.
You
All
too.
Right.
Okay.
Take care.
Ciao.